TJ. Before we start, if you're feeling stuck browsing on your device, I encourage you to take this moment to step away for a bit before enjoying. However, if it feels healthy to join in, let's get right to it.
Hello, I'm TJ, and starting a few years ago, I became very interested in Pokemon challenges. And with the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I began brainstorming with a couple of buddies an idea for what we dubbed the Pokemon Championlocke, which would combine a tournament and a hardcore Nuzlocke together. I've seen a lot of Nuzlockes, I've seen a lot of challenges that don't feel like they have the same stakes, they don't feel as connected to the Pokemon, or they don't mind as much when there's a lost attempt. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be so cool if there were a way to combine a social tournament, people vying for who would be best at the end, and a Nuzlocke. And so, we have made the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Championlocke. Now, let's hop in. In the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Championlocke, 2 to 5 players will attempt a hardcore Nuzlocke with the restricted rules below. Though players may go through their Nuzlockes cooperatively, each player that reaches the end of the game must make a team composed of their Nuzlocke encounters, no others, to compete in a tournament to determine a winner for the whole challenge. And if more than 2 make it, it's a double elimination tournament, and the winner gets a trophy. To prepare at the end of the run, players may EV and IV train as well as level their Pokemon to level 100. Additionally, if all players agree before leveling up their final battle teams, each player may pick 1 to 2 bands for another player's team. That chosen player will then pick bands for the next player, and so on until bands are picked for each entrant. So, for instance, let's say you have 3 people make it to the end of the run. You would pick 1 to 2 bands for them. They would pick 1 to 2 bands for them. They would pick 1 to 2 bands for you, and that would be the total amount of bands. The run starts after all 3 paths or raids are open, and this guide is going to be spoiler-free until the very end of the resource section. That's going to be a section that I very explicitly mentioned, okay? So, without further ado, let's look at the rules. The catch rules. So, name your Pokemon for emotional purposes. Bonus points if the name is more involved. You may catch non-encounter Pokemon for items, i.e. for a leader's crest, but if you catch Pokemon that are not one of your encounters, for an item, you must release them afterwards, after getting the item. As this is a multiplayer challenge, trade evolutions are also allowed. You cannot catch more encounters than were permitted for the rest of the run to prepare for the tournament. When we get to the resource section, we'll show you how we broke down how many encounters you get per gym, but just as a cheat sheet, 40 is the total. Okay, at the start, all players decide on one of the catch rules below. Number 1, you have 90 seconds per route to catch a Pokemon of your choosing. Number 2, use Terra Raids for your encounters. That is our preferred method. 2-star raids are going to be unlocked when you hit the level 20 cap, because Pokemon from those raids will be level 20. 3 stars, level 35, 4 stars after 45, so on and so forth. So all that means is, yes, if you get to an encounter and it's a 2-star and it's something really cool, you can't use it. Yes, it's a bummer. However, it also means that you'll be able to use it for your next encounter, because, as we'll get to later, you cannot over-level the next battle, okay? So this is actually for your benefit, so you're actually able to make use of all the encounters that you come across, okay? So, when you decide on Terra raids to choose, you're going to travel to the nearest, and that is just so you don't cherry pick. So, for instance, if you see, oh, this is a Steel Terra type raid, I'm going to go pick that one. You can make whatever rules you like, but just for the sake of this challenge in particular, go to the closest one to you. Now, if you run out of some in an area, you can say, okay, I'm going to fly over to the other side of the map and then see which one is closest. So, there's a little bit of flexibility there. The thing I like about Terra Raids is that it randomizes the game a little bit more, and that's something that Pokemon Challenges did with his Soul Link Nuzlocke with Alfornada, and I think I prefer that method. Okay, number 3. Make and use a table for legal Pokemon for each route, which can then be rolled on to randomize an encounter. Now, this one is going to be a little bit slower. It takes more time to put everything in a table, but if you want something that's closer to the original Nuzlocke challenge, that is an option. Number 4. Your encounters are chosen by your banning opponent that we mentioned earlier for the tournament, right? Number 5. This is one that my buddy Jamie came up with. I love this. And he's currently doing this now. He has a lot of Pokemon because I lost a lot. One player can be a payback character whose team is composed of fainted Pokemon from other challengers, just on their first run. A fun, twisted way to lend more emotional tension to the challenge. Okay, now, on to Pokemon limitations. No starters, no legendaries, no Pokemon from Area 0, for those who know what those are. Okay, no duplicates. All right, and that's it. Now, for those who don't know what a duplicate is, that means if you encountered a Charmander earlier in the game, which I don't think you can even find in the game right now, but then later on you found another Charmander, or you found a Charizard, you would not be able to catch another one of them, even if your Pokemon had already fainted, okay? So, once you encounter a Pokemon of a certain evolution line, you cannot capture any more of that same kind of Pokemon. Alright. Now, onto KO and Whiteout rules. So, if a Pokemon faints, it's out for the rest of the run. The duplicate clause still applies, okay? Fainting while in Terra battles or in star-based missions, which, for those who don't know, you will see when you start playing, those also do not count as a feint, okay? Now, for Whiteout rules, you will choose one of the below. 1. Whiteout equals out of the game. Any player that is knocked out may only make another attempt at the tournament if everyone's run ends. So, this is like you're eliminated through losing the Nuzlocke. Okay. Number 2, lose all your Pokemon, you're out of the game. So, the same as the previous criteria, except in this case, it's losing all your Pokemon. Number 3, if you lose all of your Pokemon, you restart. For each time you restart your run, you make another attempt at the Nuzlocke, your opponents get to either decide whether you lose one of your 6 Pokemon slots for the final battle, or your banning opponent gets to pick 2 more bans. So, whichever rival trainers / buddies choose, whether they choose to ban 2 more Pokemon from your final team in the last tournament, or if they choose to have you remove a Pokemon from your team, they're going to decide on that. So that's kind of the punishment for losing a round. This is a fun way to find a compromise to still make it feel like there is some tension, but it does not take you out of the fun just because you lost a round, and I'm currently on my 5th. So it's secretly just because I'm bad. But this is my first attempt at a Nuzlocke, so give me some slack. Okay. Next, we have item rules. No using items in battle except for Pokédolls, which allow you to escape from a battle, so those are allowed. Held items are allowed, and TM grinding is up to your group's discretion or your grinding preferences. So if you allow held items, if you allow TMs, yes, that makes the game a little bit easier, but it also makes it a lot more tedious, and so you have to grind more. So if you're someone like, I don't know, a person who failed their first four attempts at the game, every time you come back in, having to regrind for those things can be rather tedious. So at the beginning, even though we have here that you can allow held items, if you choose to ban TMs or held items, it not only makes the game harder, but it also makes it less grindy. So that's kind of your, difficulty slider you can mess with there. So, okay. Next, players will choose from one of the 3 rule sets for stat and nature items. Okay? 1, not allowed until the tournament, which reduces grinding for optimal play. So, if you ban stat items like protein, carbos, using mints, using the swift feathers, anything that affects your IVs, EVs, nature, it makes the game a lot less grindy, and it makes it a little harder. Number 2, you can only use what is passively gathered. So, this gives you more options than number 1, but it's also harder to draw a line, oh, did I go to this area because I secretly wanted to pick up more items on the ground, or is it just something I was doing naturally? So it makes the lines a little bit blurrier, and it can detract from the legitimacy of the challenge a little bit, but at the end of the day, this is for your enjoyment, so if that seems like a fair rule, then that is something you can do. Number 3, no restrictions. So it's freer, but it encourages a lot of grinding. So every time you get to a gym, if you don't grind for EVs, you don't grind for IVs, you don't go for the best nature for your Pokemon, you don't get all the held items, TMs that you would need, you're playing unoptimally. So if you lose, then you're like, oh crud, if only I would have spent 30 hours grinding. But to me, that's a kind of crummy situation to be in, where it's like, do you really want to sit down and grind an extra 30 hours just to go to one gym? It's a lot more tedious, and so if you so choose, just for the sake of succeeding in all of your gyms, you can do that, but be warned that it will make it a lot more tedious and grinding. And my preferred rule set, the one that I get the sense is the least grindy, are going to be the 2 above. So take that with caution. Okay, battle and level rules. So, no switching Pokemon after you KO in a Pokemon, and that is what we call de facto set mode. In previous Pokemon games, for those who don't know, there's a mode called set mode that after you would defeat an opponent's Pokemon, they would send out a new Pokemon, and you would not be able to switch out before them. In this game, there is no set mode, so it will always give you the option to say, oh, would you like to switch your Pokemon? In this challenge, obviously you can make your own rules, however, for this particular challenge, your option will be no, to stay in, okay? So, next we have, for all gyms, titans, bases, or other main fights, which are going to be listed in the resource section below, you can't have more Pokemon than the opponent, okay? So, as the titans and star battles are balanced differently, you can use 6. So, for those who have not gone through the game yet, the star fights and the titans are balanced in such a way that it made sense to us to allow 6. If you want to play with those numbers, then that's entirely up to you. However, we decided that having 6 for those would be just fine, and there are a lot. There are so many main battles in this game. I would give yourself a little bit of a break, but again, if you want to make it tougher, go for it. Okay, now, the last one is, you cannot overlevel gyms, and there's a reason there's an asterisk there, okay? If accidental, 1 overlevel is permitted. Any higher than the Pokemon's got to be taken out of the party, or until it is at or below the cap again. So, what this means is, if you go to a gym, and their highest level Pokemon's 27, and you are a level above them, I personally permit this. So, there's a reason why. In this game, there are a lot of random trainers that will fight you before going to gym challenges. And I was trying to think, okay, does giving this 1 extra level make the game that much easier? And the answer for a lot of the battles is no. And if you don't allow it, how much more tedious does it make the game? Because there are a lot of different battles in the game where they will be prefaced with trainers, and it's kind of hard to remember. And so, if it only is by 1 level, it felt really dumb if you were trying to get your Pokemon close to the next level so they could level up in the battle, to then take them out just because you were 1 level above. It felt really silly. And so, for me personally, I think being 1 level is just fine. And if you would like to make an addendum to this, what you can do is, let's say you have 1 Pokemon that overlevels. What you may do is you can start off the battle with a Pokemon that is not, and then after you knock out their first Pokemon, everyone else would have leveled by that point anyways, right? So at that point, you may switch to the other Pokemon. So, not a huge deal, but just for those who wanted to know why you would, like, give that leeway, it's because there's some weird fights in the game where you end up like some schmuck in the front of a Team Star base fights you with a couple Pokemon, you level up, and you're like, am I going to toss this whole team just because I didn't remember this, like, random dude was here? It was a little silly to me, so that's our idea. So, we hope that you have a blast. Below are some resources, including encounters per gym, per battle restrictions, and handy sites for your upcoming adventure. So, we wish you the best of luck. Now to the resource section, okay? So, spoilers. Spoilers. Anyone else here? Anyone else here who doesn't want spoilers? Okay, we're going. We're going to go over this super briefly. In each of these, under the encounters per section, what this means is before you get to the first gym, you have 7 encounters. The way that we calculated this was by how many areas you could go to, including towns, before you got to the first gym, and that we decided was 7. This has been extrapolated. I'm not going to go through each one of these. For each area, in all of these total up to 40. So after you get past gym 1, you'll be able to catch 4. After you get past gym 2, you'll be able to catch 4 here. So that would put you in pre-gym 3, okay? Simple enough. Now, below, we have also done the honors of leaving how many Pokemon you can bring to that battle. So if you see right here, in front of in front of the Cortondo bug type gym, it says 3. So that means that you may only bring 3 Pokemon. And it tells you the level cap over here. So your Pokemon may not be over level 15, with the exception that I mentioned above, right? Now, besides that, that's pretty much it. Something that I would recommend is we have left a couple links for Cerebi here. If you look up Cerebi Victory Road, Cerebi Starfall Street, and Cerebi Titan Pokemon, that is going to give you most of the fights that are going to be in the game except for the very end. And that can be super helpful, especially with some of the abilities that these Pokemon have. I had a couple of entire wipes, and I've had to do new tries just because I did not realize that a certain Poniard had Defiant. So that's your wording, okay? Poniard has Defiant. All right, now, yeah, after you finish the entire game, you will fight against your fellow players, and in this case, I have 2 Pokemon I could bring to my team, because I've lost the first 4 with my first 4 poor attempts, unfortunately. But yeah, and if you like this idea, and just slap the table for no reason, please let us know how it goes, because I think it's kind of a fun idea. Yeah, hope you have a blast. All right, take care.